and we are here with another episode of Writers and Writing. And our guest today is Shibal Bhatia, and we will be talking to her about her books, her writing, and what has kept her engaged with writing itself. So we are going to move on to the questions next. Hi Shibal, do you
Hi,
want to
Shabnam.
do you want to tell us a little bit about your book?
Oh, we start with the book, is it?
Yes, please.
Okay. So, Bena Summer is, I love the book. Bena Summer
So do we.
Bena Summer is the story of the 8-year-old girl called Benazir and what happens to her during one summer vacation where she spends time in two tiny towns in Mufassal, India, Gaya and Sultanpur, which is where her grandparents live. Dadi ka ghar is one and Nani ka ghar is the other.
Right.
I don't know if it is a coming-of-age tale, but it is a story that I really wanted to put across. It is in many, many ways my story and that of my cousins.
Right. Moving on from Bena Summer, if we were to talk about, where are you currently, physically and mentally?
So, where am I in my head? Completely Virginia Woolf, actually. 500 pounds a year and a room of my own. Right? A really happy space, a space that gives me the freedom and the discipline to do everything I want to. So I have a full-time job as an eye doctor. I run 2 tiny after-school clubs in Badshahpur and Gurgaon. Full-time mom, parenting is a black hole to a teenager. And I also write. So yeah, 500 pounds a year I have.
If I were to ask, eye doctor as a profession, but why writing?
More than anything else, I think I was writing for my son.
Okay.
Because it is not the easiest time to communicate with a teenager of things that are of importance and stuff that we know to be true. And a story is the simplest form of communication, I thought. If I could just write it and he'd not have to listen to me on my time or his time, he could do it whenever he wanted to.
What has been one of the most enduring reader reviews that you have come across for Bena Summer? Something that sort of has still stayed with you?
The nicest thing
Yes.
was one of my little cousin's daughters who came and said, I want to be friends with Bena.
Okay, that's
I don't
really
think there can be anything there can't be a greater compliment than that.
True,
Yeah?
very true.
And then when Tina came to me and said that, she'd read the book almost 4 months ago, but the story has lingered. I loved that because, she reads so much. So that was lovely too. So yeah, I think these two things are why I have Bena Summer on my bedside. My bedside table has nothing, but the book is there because of these two acts of faith, I think, more than anything else.
Nice. Moving on to more generic questions about your reading and what you have read, all along.
I'm a compulsive reader, Shabnam.
So
that's compulsive. So if you're going to ask me my one favorite, I will want to die.
I won't do a one favorite. We don't have a one favorite, so I'll leave it So you can go ahead and create a whole TBR for us and viewers. So please feel free. So if I were to ask, some of your favorite Indian writers, contemporary or classical, I leave it to you to choose, but who have been, influences for you as well?
That's a tough one. So lots of poetry, huh? So if I was to start off, then Vikram Seth. End of the road Vikram Seth. I get all starry-eyed, teenager, mushy when I talk of him. Entirely and completely. Ghalib, because there is nothing more mellifluous and lyrical than Urdu than when it is done right. Fairs, if we can still claim him as our own. We should. It's not a Pakistani.
I think that's the thing about shared legacy as well when it comes to these writers. I'm glad you're mentioning Fairs.
Yeah, I know. It's so Sanja, right? It's part of my DNA and I can't not mention Fairs. What else? If I will have to find somebody who writes prose, I will say Arundhati Roy. Lyrical. But then she writes prose in poetry, right? In song. Again, the God of Small Things. Not the Azadi Arundhati Roy, even though I'm reading Azadi right now a second time. Her politics resonates with me completely. But the God of Small Things, with its absolutely brilliant patchwork lyricism, it was... I think I fell in love with almost everyone in the book and with the author. So yeah, is 3 enough, or do I do more?
3 is good. Yeah.
3 is good.
Yeah. And they're like,
But this is because I've been reading them again. There's so many that I love. I thought I enjoyed Arkin and Ryan as well, and I remember reading B.S. Naipaul, except that then the politics gets to you at the end, and then you say, oh, I can't separate the author from the book, and then the book doesn't seem that nice.
Yeah. You talked about growing up in Gaya and Patna. So
no, I didn't grow up in Gaya. Yeah.
Okay. I mean, like, you visited, right?
Summer vacations.
And schooling was in Patna, I suppose.
And Delhi. Yes.
Yeah. So, and Delhi. Anything which you came across in terms of, like, regional language literature written in Hindi or in any other language, and writers who are supposed to, like, who are in that canon of regional writing? I mean, there are still these canons, but...
Yeah, I know they are, but that's a tough one. So listen, I was brought up on a very steady diet of Enid Blyton, all right? So okay. I'm going to be extremely apologetic on that one. But my favorite book ever, I think, one book ever, which was written by Dr. Zakir Hussain, India's first president. It's called Abu Khan Ki Bakri. Have you read it?
No, I even haven't heard of it. So
you haven't? Oh my God! Okay, so listen. Let me just tell you the story nice and quick. Let me sit down nicely.
Yes.
So Abu Khan Ki Bakri. So he writes in the foreword that it is not his story. It was narrated to him by somebody called Ruqayya.
Okay.
And this is a story that I think it's my holy grail. Not only do I want to write something as beautiful, but it is something I want to live.
Mm-hmm.
So this Bakri, this little goat, her name was Chandni, and she was brought to this man who loved his goats, and she was beautiful, and she had pretty little horns, and she was white and gorgeous, and everyone loved her. And Abu Khan, the owner, would always bring her the freshest grass and gave her a really long rope in this wonderful, wonderful garden of his. So she was always, she was tied to a peg, but she was free and within the fences. And she would always look at the mountains and want to go. And there were wolves in the mountains. And Abu Khan would tell her, no, you can't go because, they will kill you. You have to stay here and you're safe and I'm giving you whatever you need. You can have corn some days and mushrooms some days. And Chandni escaped the one day. And of course, Radko, the wolf, came. And Abu Khan was frantically looking for her because he loved her so much. And Chandni could hear him blow his little horn, calling her, Chandni, Chandni, main yahan hu, look this way. And Abbaji, my Nana ji used to tell me this story so beautifully when I was a little girl. But Chandni, and Chandni could see the wolf's eyes shine. You know how predatory eyes shine. And she could hear him growl. And she was like, if I only go to Abu Khan, he'll save me. What do you think she did? Exactly what you and I hope to do in our lives. She didn't go. She decided to headbutt the wolf. And what happens in real life is what happened to Chandni. And she obviously didn't win. And the birds in the trees who were watching her were chirruping amongst themselves and talking to each other, saying, half of them were saying, Chandni lost the battle. And the other half said, Chandni won the battle. And Abu Khan Ki Bakri is my favorite story in the world.
My God, I don't know. I mean, like, I actually did not imagine.
It's a children's story. It has 14 little tiny tales in it. But this one, every time I think of it, it still gives me goosebumps. And every time I'm at crossroads, I pray and I hope that I'm Chandni. Yeah. And I must tell you another little story about that. And so many years after I read Abu Khan Ki Bakri, I was sitting in this little bus stop in Provence, and I see this little book in French that says Le Petit Chèvre de Monsieur Seguin, and I open it, and guess what?
There's a
Little Chèvre is the little Bakri, and Chandni's name is Blanquette in French, and it's an early 19th century publication.
So they translated it
into, yes, the French was the original. In 1860s or something, and the goat was Blanquette, and she was fighting for liberty.
How stories travel, like across borders.
And that's what I did. I had this really cranky Libara mobile, which was really expensive to call then. We didn't have WhatsApp. And I called my mom, Mama, I found Abu Khan Ki Bakri. My mom was like, what? And I was like, listen. And she says, yes. And that's what we talked of, you know. And Ruqayya would have been somebody in the 1940s, 50s who taught this, who recited the story to Zakir Hussain when he was a child. And she had read a book in French. And that's the timelessness of storytelling. Because I don't think there is anything more powerful than storytelling when it comes to political dissent also. And talking of political dissent to children, I think is the most powerful tool we have in shaping the history of nations and ourselves as a people, and which is why I write for children.
So I think we've come full circle to that. You're writing for children. We're back to that, and I think we couldn't have had a better finishing line. So thank you for that, Shubhal.